7th Forum on China and Africa Cooperation, FOCAC. President Buhari joins other African leaders in Beijing. Nigeria opened September savings bond bid. CBN sanction, shares of Erin Bank slump as investors react. Plus, Nigeria is world's largest cassava producer and 4th producer of groundnut. This is Business Express coming to you from our Abuja studios with me, Muplang Dakok. Today promises to be a basket full as we look into the economic impacts of recent diplomatic engagements of President Muhammadu Buhari. Sit back and enjoy the program. African leaders have converged on Beijing, China for the 7th Forum on China and Africa Cooperation. The two-day meetings would primarily focus on deepening economic ties between Africa and China. Member states of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have resolved to take far-reaching measures towards creating the right conditions for sustainable economic growth and development in the sub-region. These are in the areas of good governance, fight against corruption, combating terrorism, as well as organized crimes by deepening and strengthening relevant institutions. Chairman of ECOWAS Commission, President Muhammadu Buhari, stated this at a high-level dialogue between Chinese and African leaders, as well as business representatives in Beijing. Adamu Sambo reports.
The high-level dialogue, which featured contributions by representatives of the various sub-regions of the African continent, was an opportunity for the Chinese leader Xi Jinping to once again promote his country's Belt and Road Initiative. BRI, as it is called, is a creative endeavor that seeks to tap into China's industrial strength to meet the needs of African countries, especially in the development of infrastructure, industrial parks, human resources, and technical training.
China's investment in Africa comes with no political strings attached. China does not interfere in Africa's internal affairs and does not impose its own will on Africa. What we value is the sharing of development experience and the support we could offer to Africa's national rejuvenation and prosperity. China-Africa cooperation under the BRI is a way of open and inclusive cooperation that will help African enterprises and businesses better integrate into the global value chains and facilitate Africa's industrialization and modernization.
Speaking on behalf of ECOWAS, which he chairs, President Muhammadu Buhari expressed appreciation of member states for China's increasing investment in the sub-region aimed at building a prosperous and shared future.
China is today the largest investor in the sub-region in both the private and public sectors, covering areas such as infrastructure, energy, agriculture, mining, and healthcare. China also provides significant assistance in emergency humanitarian aid and response to climate change.
The president said various projects are now ongoing in the sub-region, including railways, power infrastructure, airports, and numerous routes through Chinese financing. The Nigerian leader was, however, emphatic that while China's help is vital, the main push to transform the economies of the sub-region must come from genuine efforts and commitment by member states.
ECOWAS member states will continue to pay emphasis on encouraging more foreign direct investment in the sub-region. To this end, member states are looking at the opportunities that the China International Import-Export Initiative will offer our exporters to gain market access for their goods and services in China. Such an opportunity will help to diversify the economy of our sub-region from over-reliance on primary agricultural and mineral products, and subsequently correct the huge trade imbalance between China and the ECOWAS sub-region on a win-win basis for both parties. We would also request visa facilitation for our businessmen and women and students who seek to visit China.
The West African sub-region, President Buhari said, is also endowed with numerous tourism potentials and therefore made a case for support by the Chinese government towards developing tourism-related infrastructure to empower the citizens, create more job opportunities, and eliminate poverty. From Beijing, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
While African and Chinese leaders were busy at the opening of the 2018 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, some Nigerians and Chinese businessmen were taking advantage of the event to sign some memoranda of understanding and agreements on some projects to be implemented in Nigeria. Makut Simon Macham reports.
Between Nigeria and China have continued to grow even as China makes more inroads into Africa and Nigeria in particular. At the Nigerian embassy in Beijing, these Nigerian and Chinese businessmen are crossing the T's and dotting the I's on some projects to be executed in Nigeria. Edo State government is partnering Chinese investors for development of Benin River Port, Industrial Park and Modular Refinery.
So the Benin River Port is going to be a sister port to the Lekki Dipsy Port, and we expect that up to 30% of the cargo going to the Lekki Dipsy Port will be meant for Benin River Port.
Another Nigerian business group is developing an offline-online business clearinghouse that will connect Chinese and Nigerian businessmen under one roof.
There's a need to ease interactions and linkages between businesses. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
We can help them to export to China with our platform. So we're not just online, but also, for example, what is offline, we have to show room for the products from Nigeria.
All these agreements are signed under the watch of Nigeria's Deputy Head of Mission to China, Ambassador Bakori Ali Usman, and the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, Yewande Sadiku.
The imbalance of trade is always against us. Why? Because we don't sell much to China. We always buy from China, we don't sell much to China. With signing of these private sectors now, we expected certain of our goods to be coming from Nigeria to China.
While these agreements were being signed between Nigerian investors and their Chinese counterparts, the Chinese government at the opening of FOCAC 2018 announced that $60 billion will be made available to African countries for various development projects. This therefore means that the relations between Nigeria and China would only get deeper. From Beijing in China, Makut Simon Macham, NTA News.
Now, Ogbonnaya Ukuku, an investment expert, joins us in Abuja studios to discuss issues likely to dominate discussions in Beijing as available opportunities for African countries. You're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
The once in every 3 years meetings usually sees China doling out loans to African countries, but some have seen this loan burden as worrisome. What's your take?
I see, for me, every fund that is coming into Africa would help develop Africa. Every money you take from China will help you build your infrastructure. Okay. One thing, first things first, China will always, do their search. They plan, they pre-plan. So for them to, their entry point to Africa is to use the long-term funds that they have. Because money, you send money on an errand. So what they do, because we have infrastructure deficit, we still have to, improve our business structure in Nigeria and Africa generally. So they will take advantage of that, dole out such funds so that they can become part and parcel of development of Africa. So the onus is on us as Africans to begin to now think of economic development, strategically taking advantage of whatever it is that they are doling out to develop ourselves, to develop the continent, and then at the end of the day to be a win-win situation for everybody.
Okay, so talking about win-win, do you see the relationship between Nigeria and China being a mutually beneficial one?
Yes, as it stands right now, see, it takes two to tango. You have to strategically take advantage of whatever it is, because nobody will love you as much as you love yourself. China will do what they're doing because they have over almost 2 billion people to take care of. They have an economy to grow. They have services that they are rendering that they need to push into other climes. So as they're doing all of that, see, it's a game of what are you bringing and what can I take from it. So for us, yes, there's still a lot we need to do, because we're still doing if you look at the trade imbalance between China and Nigeria, for example, the gap is still much over. I think is over $19 billion. That's a lot, but there are still things that they need in China that we can make here. They need cassava, solid minerals, are things. So we have to also make sure that the investment that's going into the infrastructure, taking care of the export corridor, that will help us make things easier for exporters to want to push things to China, to earn us foreign exchange.
We'll go over now to Lagos, and Chris Onalo is in our Lagos studios. He joins the conversation. Hello, Mr. Onalo.
Thank you very much. I think the Chinese is playing the role of economic catalyst, trying to advance their national interest in pushing, towards massive investment in emerging market, which is absolutely right. And I think on the part of Nigeria, our president has become professional salesman president to equally, touch the critical area of Chinese government in terms of interest to growing their economy, expanding their economic frontiers down the line of the investment need that we have in Africa. I think it is a win-win situation, to be honest. But one thing we must be very careful about is that at this crucial time, Nigeria is looking forward to massive foreign investment down all sectors of the economy. Then the negotiating team from Nigeria must bear in mind that Nigeria also needs a catalyst kind of investment that creates jobs, investment that allow Nigerian product developed, produced, and export to the Chinese government. That would be very strategic, to us. Secondly, while we do that, we must also recognize property right and ownership in future, because Chinese, as it currently stands, command the highest level of human population on earth. And I think they are trying to be very futuristic, that time shall come, and very quickly too, that Chinese will become a very large community in Nigeria. And investment and property ownership are inseparable. So you've got to be very careful of that so that we don't look at the immediate investment need for this country and lose sight of the consequences that it will have in future. But as I said before, there is need for Nigeria to be very strategic, not just looking at the fund that is coming in large quantity, in strategic, in key areas, and then forgetting that our own industry need to take advantage of this investment and then get up in terms of industrialization to be able to produce massively and exporting them.
All right, let's talk about institutions. What lessons can Nigeria learn from China in terms of strengthening her institutions?
Well, institutionally, that is, we have to draw a line between economic interest and the political interest. What Chinese is doing right now is pursuing vigorously economic interest. And they are less bothered about institutional framework, like counterparty collaboration and the rest of them. What they want is, for example, we are talking about today signing a deal of $300-something million US for communication sector. So what is institutionalization there? The institutionalization is collaboration. And I believe that we shouldn't bother much about any other form of institutional influence in this case, because they are not going to tell us how we govern ourselves. They are not really looking at democratic institutions, how it should flourish, but they are looking at basically economic interest. But one thing that is worthy of commending about Chinese, determination to push into hitherto, as per the West, the investment destination that is fraught with a lot of crisis, a lot of risks. But the Chinese government believes that they want to be part of Nigeria, and that the risky scenario, which is orchestrated somehow by political instability and insecurity, of course, they are not bothered about that. They want to keep going on believing the same fate that we have in Nigeria, that things will settle. So it's an institutional framework in the context of democratic principle being nurtured, security system being, put in place to galvanize and protecting investment. Is not a major thinking of their own side, but they are risk undertakers. If it goes well, fantastic. If it does not go well, well, that is the essence of investment.
Thank you. We'll come back to Mr. Ogbonnaya in the studios. Mr. Ogbonnaya, what kind of deals do you think Africa should be proposing towards improving her infrastructure or development generally?
Yeah, just like you just mentioned it. See, one of the first deals that we should consider, because of the kind of funds that come from China, is actually because it's long-term funds. So we need to do a whole lot in our infrastructure, because the infrastructure deficit we have in Africa is quite a lot. Although countries like South Africa have gone beyond where some of us in the western west part of Africa are now. But if you look at if the investment coming will come towards infrastructure, now industrialization also. Even the oil and gas sector, we've not even been able to add value to our petroleum product, which we export to China. We can take advantage of this kind of for us to see how we can attract investment in areas like the petroleum sector, that's the refineries, the petrochemical industry, which is one of the most important sector you can think of, because everything you have in your homes all come from the petrochemical industry. So being able to add value to the oil and gas sector, and then manufacturing generally. So if you get support in your infrastructure, which will support whatever it is that you're going to do in your manufacturing sector, and then solid mineral sector, because these are things that require huge investment and long-term funds.
Okay. Mr. Chris, your thoughts on that, please?
Well, I think the strategic investment in oil and gas in key sectors like telecommunication, manufacturing, and road construction, and so on and so forth. In line with the principle of investment, investment institutions is not going to think about what sector actually you should, put investment in. It could be named after a particular sector, in this case, communication or oil and gas. But then I think on the premise of the national vision for, development in the country, that is the, attraction that moves in investor to look at what you are talking about. And then the next thing is how to prudently deploy that investment portfolio to achieving the objective in that sector. There's no doubt that Nigeria at this point, being a major producer in oil, you need to really invest massively in oil and gas. The population is not on our side in terms of increase. Nigerians need to be mobile, and they need to talk much more telecommunication infrastructure that enable effective delivery of telecom services, need to be given greater attention for investment. And so those are critical things as defined by our own national economic policy roadmap, that if this is what we want, investors can key into it, knowing the returns that they will get eventually out of that. But I think, generally speaking, Nigeria needs to attract high level of investment down on the manufacturing side. I keep stressing the point of manufacturing because Nigerian can easily feel the impact of economic development or investment that comes in if it goes into manufacturing. That is to say that you are asking Chinese government, set up this plant in this geographical location, set up in that plant, in that geographical location, so that jobs can be created, technology can be transferred very quickly. And I think these are the things that we will develop, just like a business plan. You are looking for investment, investors will ask you what sector that is critical to your development. And then they'll do their own plus and minus and see if it is also very strategic, to themselves, because in every investment, there must be return on the investment. And so I think in virtually all facets of the Nigerian economy required massive foreign investment. And I think, in my opinion, that's why I said at the beginning that is what Mr. President is becoming a professional salesman president.
Professor Chris in Lagos, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on Business Express. We'll have to come back to the studio where Mr. Ogbonna is with us. Can you talk to us about how Nigeria can improve its status of trade with China?
We have to do more as in respect to going into manufacturing, as in if we get enough funding to support our manufacturing sector, that will help us, in improving the kind of things we take out to China. Because, China, they have, the fact that they have about 2 billion people to feed, that means they'll still have need for things, agro products, still have need for fish, they still have need for granules and all of that, the cash crops that we can produce here. Chinese are also buying a lot of cassava from here. So if we strategically look at how to improve the agri sector, it will help improve our trade imbalance that already exists. And again, another area is a solid mineral sector. We have lots of iron ore, we have lots of lead. These are things that they need so much in China, because you can't manufacture computers without using, the computer chips without using lead and the iron ore. These are things that we have here. So these are areas we need to invest more or focus our energy on, so that those, we can export more to China.
All right, Mr. Ogbonna, we have to stop our discussions here. Let's now take a look at commodity prices on the global market. And this is where we drop the anchor on this episode of Business Express. Do join us again on Wednesday for another episode. I am Muplang. Dakok.